In the Ice Age, South America was a world apart. Cut off from the rest of the planet, it evolved in isolation. Its landscapes familiar, but its life profoundly different. Here, giants walked. Massive sloths, armored herbivores, predators unlike anything seen elsewhere. For millions of years, this world evolved alone. Then the continents reconnected, and everything changed. New life arrived, and what had once lived in isolation was suddenly thrust into an unfamiliar world. After the breakup of Gondwana, South America drifted into long isolation, remaining separate from North America until about 3 million years ago. For much of that time, it functioned as an island continent, cut off from the main centers of mammalian evolution. In other parts of the world, placental predators were diversifying and competing intensely. Here, that pressure was largely absent. South America did have predators, including Megatherium carnivores and large flightless birds. But they evolved within the same closed system, without facing outside competition. The result was not a lack of evolution, but a different kind of it. Ecosystems formed in fairly stable environments, where survival did not always rely on speed, constant alertness, or quick change. Over millions of years, this stability shaped a distinct biological logic. Energy saving often mattered more than speed. Defense could replace escape. And unusual body plans could persist, simply because nothing forced them to change. In isolation, evolution does not stop. It follows its own path, one that may seem unfamiliar, even illogical when seen from the outside. Among the most distinctive animals of Ice Age South America was Megatherium, one of the largest ground sloths, living roughly between 2.6 million and 11,000 years ago. Adults could reach about 16 to 20 feet in length and weigh up to around 9,000 pounds. Fossil remains, especially from Argentina, show dense, weight-bearing limb bones and a broad pelvis adapted to support this mass. Megatherium's feeding behavior is supported by both skeletal structure and dental evidence. Megatherium's anatomy reveals a specialized feeding system shaped by its environment. Its hypsodont, high-crowned, teeth, and microwear patterns indicate a diet of coarse vegetation, including leaves, twigs, and possibly bark. Using powerful hind legs and a thick, supportive tail, it can rear up into a stable tripod posture. From this position, it reached into the canopy, pulling down branches with long, curved claws and feeding on leaves that were inaccessible to smaller herbivores. The structure of its vertebral column and tail suggests it could rear up into a stable tripod stance, using its powerful hind limbs and thick tail to balance while pulling down branches with its forelimbs. Its claws, long, curved, and laterally compressed, were well suited for grasping vegetation rather than attacking prey. Biomechanical studies also suggest relatively slow locomotion, consistent with an energy-conserving lifestyle typical of large herbivores. In this context, its large size worked as a simple, passive defense. South America's isolated animals faced less pressure to move quickly or constantly escape. Megatherium reflects a clear evolutionary principle. In a stable environment with limited threats, natural selection may favor efficiency, large size, and access to resources over speed. In the Ice Age landscapes of South America, survival did not always depend on movement. For Glyptodon, it depended on endurance. At first glance, Glyptodon appears almost immobile, a low, rounded body covered by a massive dome. Adults could reach nearly 10 feet in length and weigh over 2,200 pounds. But this shape was not a limitation. It was a solution. Its shell was not simply a covering, but a rigid structure made from hundreds of tightly fused osteoderms. Unlike modern armadillos, whose armor is flexible, Glyptodon's carapace formed a continuous, solid dome. Studies of fossilized plates show a dense internal structure capable of absorbing and distributing force, reducing the impact of bites or blows. This was not armor designed to deflect a single strike. It was built to endure repeated pressure. Even its tail contributed to this design. In some species, the tail was encased in bony rings, forming a reinforced extension of the body. While not primarily offensive, it could deter attacks from behind and protect vulnerable areas. Glyptodon's lifestyle matched its anatomy. Its low head position and simple grinding teeth suggest a grazing diet, feeding on grasses and low vegetation. This meant it often remained in open environments, visible and exposed. Yet unlike other herbivores, exposure did not translate directly into risk. Because Glyptodon could not run, it did not depend on escape. Instead, it reduced the need for escape altogether. Over time, it proved stable enough to persist across thousands of generations. Glyptodon reveals a different evolutionary pathway. When speed is not an option, survival can come from becoming structurally resilient, an organism not designed to avoid danger, but to withstand it. Not all Ice Age mammals in South America fit a single, predictable pattern. Some defy clear classification. Toxodon is one of the clearest examples. First identified from fossils collected during the voyage of Charles Darwin in the early 19th century, Toxodon puzzled scientists from the beginning. Its skull alone suggests a combination of traits rarely seen together. The front incisors were large and continuously growing, similar to those of rodents, while the cheek teeth were broad and adapted for grinding tough vegetation, resembling grazing mammals. This dual structure indicates a flexible diet, capable of processing both grasses and more fibrous plant material. Its nasal opening sits high on the skull, an unusual placement that has led some researchers to propose the presence of a short, muscular snout, possibly useful for feeding in shallow water. Stable isotope analysis of fossil teeth supports this idea, showing evidence of both terrestrial and aquatic plant consumption. Toxodon's body adds another layer of complexity. It could reach 8 to 10 feet in length and weigh over 2,200 pounds. Its limbs were short and robust, with joint surfaces adapted for stability rather than speed. The structure of its feet suggests it moved slowly across soft ground, such as riverbanks or wetlands. Genetic studies place Toxodon among extinct South American ungulates, closer to parasitactyls, like horses and rhinos, than to rodents or hippos. But its appearance does not reflect that ancestry clearly. This is the key point. Toxodon is not a transitional form, it is a functional one. Toxodon is not an evolutionary mistake. It is evidence that, in isolation, life does not follow a fixed blueprint. It experiments. For tens of millions of years, South America remained largely separate from the rest of the world. That isolation began to end around 3 million years ago with the formation of the Isthmus of Panama. As tectonic uplift and volcanic activity closed the seaway between North and South America, a continuous land bridge formed, connecting two ecosystems that had evolved separately for a very long time. This event is known as the Great American Biotic Interchange. It was not a sudden invasion, but a gradual movement of species in both directions. Fossil records show that mammals, such as early relatives of camels, deer, and carnivores, began moving south, while some South American species, like ground sloths and armadillo relatives, moved north. But the balance was uneven. North American animals had evolved in intense competition, with highly specialized placental predators and faster, more adaptable herbivores. South America's ecosystems, shaped by long isolation, had not faced that same level of pressure. The connection did not immediately transform the landscape. At first, it only allowed movement, but over time, it brought new behaviors, new strategies, and new interactions that had never existed there before. For the first time, a stable and self-contained system was no longer closed. It was now exposed. Not just to new species, but to a completely different way of surviving. With the formation of the land bridge, new predators entered South America, bringing with them strategies that had evolved under far more competitive conditions. One of the most significant was Protocyon, a large canid of the late Pleistocene, with fossil remains found in Brazil, Argentina, and Bolivia. Estimated to weigh around 44 to 66 pounds, Protocyon was not exceptionally large, but its anatomy suggests a different kind of advantage. Its skeletal proportions, particularly the elongation of the distal limb bones, suggest an animal adapted for efficient, sustained running rather than short bursts of speed. Dental morphology provides further insight. Its teeth show a combination of slicing carnassials and more generalized molars, indicating a flexible diet that likely included both active predation and opportunistic feeding. Isotopic studies of fossilized enamel suggest it consumed a range of herbivores from open environments. This anatomy points to a hunting strategy very different from anything native herbivores had previously faced. Protocyon did not rely on ambush. Instead, it likely hunted in coordinated groups, maintaining pressure over time. For the prey species of this ecosystem, the impact was profound. The threat was no longer a single moment of attack. it became a prolonged event. Animals that once fed and moved at a steady pace were now forced into repeated movement. Energy reserves declined, recovery time shortened, and even brief disturbances could accumulate into long-term stress. For the first time, survival depended not only on size or defense, but on endurance and the ability to withstand pressure. In this changing landscape, another predator appears, one that does not rely on endurance, but on timing. Smilodon represents a different solution to hunting, one built around precision rather than pursuit. Fossil evidence from across the Americas shows that Smilodon possessed an unusually robust forelimb structure. Its humerus and radius were thick and heavily muscled, indicating exceptional strength in grappling and holding prey. Unlike modern big cats, its build suggests less emphasis on sustained running and more on controlled close-range engagement. Its most distinctive feature, the elongated upper canines, sometimes exceeding 8 inches, was not designed for repeated biting. Biomechanical studies indicate that these teeth were relatively fragile under lateral stress. Instead, they were adapted for a specific function, delivering a deep, targeted bite to soft tissue, likely the throat or neck, once the prey had been restrained. This is where timing becomes critical. Smilodon did not need to chase a fully capable animal over long distances. It could afford to wait. By the time it engaged, many prey animals were already under pressure. Species like Toxodon or young Megatherium individuals may have been fatigued from prolonged movement, separated from groups, or less alert after sustained stress. In such conditions, even a large herbivore becomes vulnerable. A typical encounter would not begin with a chase, but with proximity. Smilodon would close the distance, use its forelimbs to destabilize the animal, and then deliver a precise, controlled bite. Evidence from fossil injuries and tooth wear supports this pattern of targeted predation rather than prolonged struggle. This brief, decisive moment marks the culmination of earlier pressures. Smilodon does not act alone in shaping this ecosystem. Its effectiveness depends on conditions created by other forces: fatigue, disruption, and constant movement. Survival here is no longer determined by a single trait. It is shaped by interaction, where endurance weakens and precision ends. By the late Pleistocene, the balance of South America was already under strain. Climate fluctuations linked to the last ice age began altering temperature, rainfall, and vegetation patterns. Grasslands expanded, forests retreated, and food sources became less predictable. Many herbivores were forced to shift diets under these changing conditions. At the same time, Homo sapiens arrived, bringing new pressures. Archaeological sites show evidence of hunting, with cut marks on large mammal bones and associated stone tools. Individually, these changes were manageable. Together, they were not. An ecosystem already adjusting to new predators now faced fast environmental change and a highly adaptable new competitor, a final combination it could not sustain. In the final phase of Ice Age South America, the record narrows to a quiet absence. Around 12,000 years ago, species like Megatherium, Glyptodon, and Toxodon disappeared from the fossil record. Each was well adapted, built for efficiency, protection, or flexibility within a stable system. But that system changed faster than before. Climate shifts, new predators, and human presence created overlapping pressures that demanded rapid response. These animals were not weak. They were specialized for a world that rarely required fast adaptation. Isolation had shaped their success. It had not prepared them for sudden change. The worlds that endure the longest are not always the ones that survive.